Welcome to Kit Katastrophe. My name is Kit, and today we'll be taking a look at Transformers Siege Deluxe Class Brunt. This figure came out in 2019 as part of Wave 3 of the Deluxe assortment. Brunt's alternate mode is a purple and gray Cybertronian tank based off of the original Brunt accessory from 1986's Trypticon set. Though while the original looked very basic and flat, Brunt fills out his form with tons of pristine sculpted detail, as with most Siege figures. The main body is squat and flat, though its width tapers towards the rear end, upon which sits the rather substantial turret. This figure probably has the largest turret-to-body ratio I've ever seen on a tank transformer, as it's so tall and commands its presence. He doesn't look half bad being flanked by the likes of Signal Flare and Offshoot. Out of all three of the weaponizers released in Siege's main line, Brunt by far looks the best and most cohesive. He doesn't have the trouble of being a laid-down robot mode like Cog, or an aviator's nightmare like Six Gun. He's a simple tank, and that's that. My favorite detail of this mode comes at the very front, where you can see Brunt's face peeking out above the front panel. Normally, this would be a horrid case of visible head syndrome, but considering that Brunt is first and foremost a drone, this works in the same way as it did for the Beast Machine's AWAKENS. It's a very good stylistic decision for my tastes. Since he's a weaponizer figure, Brunt's main gimmick is that he splits apart to form a multitude of weapons and ordnance, and the instructions suggest two ways to pepper them onto a deluxe figure of your choice. First, we'll be taking a look at the demolition loadout. The front set of treads from Brunt's tank mode become unnamed platformed shoes, which only serve to make the equipping figure taller. The rotating segment of the turret becomes the TTC HD turret armor, a basic shield. The main body of the tank, plus the end of the turret's barrel, becomes the TTC AD Vortex Cannon, a surprisingly coherent weapon which is somewhat evocative of Galvatron's arm cannon. Finally, the rear treads become a backpack on which the TTC HP Oblivio launcher can rest upon, becoming a massive shoulder-mounted deliverer of death and destruction. Overall, I think the demolition loadout is the single most coherent and well-balanced out of all of the weaponizer loadouts, turning whichever figure you're arming into a formidable one-man army. Splitting Brunt back into his components lets form the Serpentine loadout. The turret armor stays where it is, and the end of the vortex cannon comes off and becomes a handgun. The front section of the tank and the rear treads come together to form the TTC MFM Proximity Boost Module, or rather a frame for which the rest of the accessories latch onto. What will become the robot arms and shins combine to form the TTC MD Hydraulic Mauler Claws, meaning the Serpentine loadout is complete. And I don't care much for it. Like most weaponizer loadouts, it's very back-heavy and most of the items feel tacked on. It's one of the more imaginative loadouts, I feel, and I admit it does have some potential for dynamic action poses once you throw a flight stand into the mix. Still, I rarely utilize these loadouts, instead just preferring to keep the weaponizers as their own distinct robots. It's not difficult to get from the Serpentine loadout to robot mode. Most of the components aren't very far from their destination, so conversion is a snap. I really like the head reveal, and most of the connecting ports are nice and tight, with the slight exceptions of Brunt's shoulder pegs. While they're not as loose as Cog's waist or Six Gun's thighs, Brunt's arms can be prone to fall off if you're not careful, which is a bummer. I was hoping at least one of the three would have perfect tolerances, but you can't win everyone, I guess. Brunt's robot mode is astounding. Based on a Centurion droid from Stormbringer, Brunt does well in eking out a distinct and memorable robot mode from his original robotless G1 form. Much like the Centurion droids, Brunt is also evocative of the original Beast Machine's tank AWAKENS, albeit a lot taller, slimmer, and lankier. Despite that, Brunt's design feels no less strong and intimidating. A good part of his intimidation factor is the head sculpt, being featureless similarly to Minicons, and yet being so characterful. It's like if the Terminator was Cybertronian. The wide monoculus optic screen gives him vision in a 360-degree arc like an Anomalocaris, though sadly the red ring of death isn't painted all the way around due to a hollow void in the back of his skull. I like the clamps formed from the front of the treads, though I don't feel that the complaints of curling iron arms some have made are valid. His elbows still bend forward, he just has non-human hands. Speaking of his elbows, that brings us to the articulation segment. Everyone's favorite part of these videos, isn't that right, audience? Starting at the top, as always, Brunt has a simple swivel. It's a very tight joint. That means his head can turn around if your fingers don't slip on it, because it is pretty much perfectly circular. It's a very tight joint. He can look up, which looks alright, but he can't look down, which is kind of disappointing considering this mold's demeanor. He really looks like he should be looking down derisively at his targets. The shoulders are a simple swivel, and they're a little loose. Like, look at that, they're kind of loose. That's just because it's just a 5mm peg. They can fall off sometimes like that, but it's nowhere near as bad as Six Gun's thighs, so I'm not that worried about it. He has a bicep swivel that goes all the way around, and an elbow that goes the full 90 degrees, which is pretty nice, and his clamps can open and shut, which is fun. I would make a T-pose joke, but I think that's run its course. His waist goes all the way around because it is just another 5mm peg, and he can, do a movie jazz if you want. His legs go forward, and they go backwards until they hit the backpack. If you feel like it, you can take the backpack off, and, that looks pretty normal, I guess. So if you want further range backwards, he can kick that far. Actually, I think he might be able to kick farther backwards that way than forwards. No, I was wrong. I have egg on my face. His thighs can swivel. They mostly just swivel inward because, or they could swivel outward as long as you bring out the legs, because he can do the splits and something scrape something grundle. He has a knee that goes 90 degrees, which is pretty cool. I like it. And he has a very impressive ankle pivot, which means he can take some extremely wide stances. So, all things considered, Brunt is an extremely posable figure. Now, he's not exactly a rubber band or anything. You can't make him do everything, but he is a very good figure for posing, and he's very fun to play with. Dare I say he's one of the better Siege figures in those regards. So, yeah, Brunt, I know you don't have thumbs, but 2 thumbs up. Brunt's easily the best of the 3 weaponizer figures, no contest. His vehicle mode is far more coherent and cohesive than Cogs or Six Guns, his robot mode is far sleeker and more inspired, and his tolerances are better as well. If you're going to get any of the 3, make it Brunt. He's the obvious choice. Now, will I be getting the Power Dashers? Maybe. Who knows? I'd definitely like to get Zatar, and Chromar would be doable. Aragon, though. Unless someone's willing to send me one, I think I'll pass. Getting rid of an extra Mirage and Impactor would be pretty difficult, I think. Either way, I'm not too worried about them. I'm happy with my Brunt, and that's all that matters. If you like this video and want to see more, please share and subscribe. I'd really like to hit 200 subscribers by the end of the year. This has been Katastrophe. Transform and roll out.